Before we jump into the chaos, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss the next adventure. Routine quarantine check, routine bioscan, routine bureaucratic nightmare until the computer decided Desmond's DNA didn't match anything in a database containing 83 million species. The technician looked confused, the screen looked broken, the apex predator in containment looked very, very interested. Zilth Senvira stared at her terminal like it had personally insulted her entire career. She'd been processing biological clearances at this intergalactic station for the better part of a cycle, and the Galactic Archive had never not once failed to identify a species. The system was comprehensive, exhaustive. It contained genetic records from every corner of explored space, cataloging everything from microscopic parasites to continent-sized colony organisms. And now it was telling her that the human standing in her scanner didn't exist. There must be an error, she muttered, initiating another deep scan protocol. The equipment hummed, projecting layers of holographic data around Desmond's casual figure. He stood there with his arms crossed, looking like someone waiting for transportation that was running late. "Is this going to take much longer?" Desmond asked. "Because I've been standing here for a while?" "The system is processing," Zilth Senvira said, not looking up. "Standard biological verification requires complete genomic analysis before station clearance." "Right, standard." Desmond shifted his weight. "Except you've scanned me 4 times now, because the results are inconsistent." "Inconsistent how?" Zilth Senvira hesitated. In her entire career, she'd never had to explain this particular problem. "The archive isn't recognizing your genetic structure." Desmond blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said slowly, "that according to our database, which contains biological records from 83 million classified species across known space, your DNA doesn't match any recognized pattern. So I'm special. So you're unclassified," Zilth Senvira corrected. "Which shouldn't be possible for a species that's already made contact with galactic civilization." The scanner completed its cycle. She watched the results populate across her screen, each line of data more confusing than the last. Genetic markers that shouldn't coexist, evolutionary branches that contradicted each other. A biological profile that looked like someone had taken pieces from dozens of different species and assembled them into something that somehow functioned. No match found. Genetic structure unrecognized. Classification unknown. "This doesn't make sense," she whispered. That's when the alarms started. Not breach alarms, not security alerts. Biological stress warnings from the Predator Containment Wing, 30 separate indicators going off simultaneously across the facility's monitoring system. Zilth Senvira's secondary heart skipped as she pulled up the observation feeds. Every carnivore in containment had turned toward the same direction, toward Desmond. A juvenile Kestar predator pressed its face against the containment barrier, breathing fog onto the transparent surface. A pack of Dreth hunters stood in perfect formation, all oriented identically. Even the solitary species, creatures that normally ignored everything except feeding schedules, had shifted position to face the scanning chamber. "What's happening?" Desmond asked, noticing her expression. Before she could answer, something moved in her peripheral vision. The Vrax containment cell, the reinforced enclosure housing the station's most dangerous resident. The creature inside hadn't moved in cycles. It was an apex predator from the Corinthian belt, contained here after being confiscated from illegal trade. Most days it just lay in the center of its cell, conserving energy the way apex predators do when they don't need to hunt. It was standing now. The Vrax was massive, easily 3 times Desmond's size, built from muscle and ancient predatory instinct. It walked slowly toward the front of its containment cell, each step deliberate, until it pressed against the reinforced barrier. Its eyes locked onto Desmond through 6 inches of military-grade containment glass and 3 walls of station infrastructure. It shouldn't have been able to see him from that position, but it was staring directly at his location. "Okay," Desmond said carefully. "That seems bad." Zilth Senvira's hands moved across her terminal, pulling up biosignature analysis. The predators couldn't possibly be reacting to Desmond. The scanning chamber was isolated, shielded, designed specifically to prevent biological signals from escaping. But the data didn't lie. Every carnivore in the facility had oriented toward his exact position within seconds of his scan completing. "This is impossible," she said. "They can't know you're here. The chamber is biologically sealed." "And yet," Desmond said, watching a pack of smaller predators pacing in perfect synchronization, "they definitely seem to know something." Zilth Senvira initiated a communication protocol, and moments later, Zixarachidus materialized in holographic form beside her terminal. He was station security chief, methodical, experienced, and currently looking very annoyed at being pulled away from whatever he'd been doing. "What's the nature of this emergency?" he asked. "The biological archive rejected a scan," Zilth Senvira said quickly. "Unclassified species, but that's not the problem." "Then what is?" She gestured toward the predator monitoring feeds. Zixarachidus's expression shifted from annoyed to confused to something approaching concern as he processed what he was seeing. "They're all oriented toward the scanning chamber," he said quietly. "Simultaneously," Zilth Senvira added, "across multiple species, different evolutionary branches, predators that have never shown coordinated behavior. That's impossible. The scanning chamber is biologically isolated. I know." She pulled up Desmond's genetic profile. "But look at this. The human's DNA structure doesn't match anything in our archives. The system can't classify him." Zixarachidus studied the data, his expression growing darker. "How can they recognize something that doesn't exist in the database?" It was a good question. The Galactic archive worked because it catalogued biological patterns, genetic markers, evolutionary adaptations, biochemical signatures. Predators recognize prey because those patterns were written into instinct over millions of evolutionary cycles. You couldn't recognize something you'd never encountered. Unless, "Show me the predator stress analysis," Zixarachidus said. Zilth Senvira pulled up the bioscan data from the containment wing. Every carnivore was exhibiting elevated stress responses, increased heart rate, heightened awareness, defensive posturing, not aggression, not hunting behavior. Recognition. "They know him?" she whispered. "They can't know him," Zixarachidus said. "His species isn't classified." Desmond cleared his throat. "Just gonna point out that I'm standing right here and can hear everything you're saying." Zilth Senvira turned to face him properly. "Have you ever been to this station before?" "First time. Encountered any of these species previously?" "I barely know what half of them are called." Zixarachidus stepped closer to the holographic display showing Desmond's genetic breakdown. "Run a secondary analysis. Cross-reference with predator instinct databases. I want to know what they're responding to." Zilth Senvira initiated the program. The system churned through data, comparing Desmond's biosignature against known predator recognition patterns. The results came back within seconds. Her blood went cold. "This can't be right," she said. "What is it?" Zixarachidus demanded. She looked up at Desmond, then back at her screen. "According to this analysis, his biosignature is triggering ancestral recognition responses across multiple predator species, different evolutionary branches, species that haven't shared common ancestry in millions of cycles." "That's impossible," Zixarachidus said. "Recognition patterns are species-specific." "Unless," Zilth Senvira said slowly, "the pattern they're recognizing is older than the species themselves. The Vrax beast hadn't moved from its position at the containment barrier. It just stood there, breathing slowly, watching, waiting." "So what are you saying?" Desmond asked. "They've met humans before?" "No," Zilth Senvira said. "They haven't, but something in their evolutionary memory has, something their ancestors encountered. Something that left a mark deep enough that it's still written into their survival instincts." The monitoring feeds showed predators across the facility, all frozen in the same attentive posture. Not hunting, not fleeing, recognizing. Zixarachidus pulled up station security protocols. "I'm locking down the predator containment wing. Until we understand what's happening. That human doesn't go anywhere near those cells." "Agreed," Zilth Senvira said. Desmond raised his hand slightly. "Quick question, what happens if they decide the containment cells aren't thick enough?" Nobody answered. In the containment wing, the Vrax beast pressed harder against the barrier. Metal groaned softly under the pressure. Then it started testing the edges of its cell, methodically, like it was searching for weaknesses. The scientific panel assembled in Zilth Senvira's lab looked like someone had grabbed random specialists from across the station and told them to solve the universe's weirdest biology problem, which, essentially, was exactly what had happened. "Let me understand this correctly," said one of the xenobiologists, a tall insectoid researcher named Chix Thermal. "You're telling us an unclassified species is triggering predator recognition responses across multiple evolutionary branches." "Not just triggering," Zilth Senvira said, pulling up holographic displays of Desmond's genetic breakdown, activating deep ancestral patterns. Species that diverged millions of cycles ago are exhibiting identical responses. Elzix Oricodus stood near the back of the room, arms crossed, which shouldn't be possible. "And yet," Zilth Senvira gestured at the data, "here we are." Naomi's voice crackled through the communication system before her hologram materialized beside the central display. "Sorry I'm late. Had to finish docking procedures. Someone want to explain why half the station's predator wing is having a collective panic attack?" "We're trying to determine that," Zyx Oricodus said. Naomi looked at the genetic displays, then at the predator behavioral data, then back at the genetics. "Oh, you scanned Desmond." Everyone turned to look at her. "You say that like you expected this," Zilth Senvira said carefully. "I mean, this specific thing? No. But Desmond tends to make predators nervous. We figured it was just his personality." "This isn't personality," Chix Thermal said. "This is biochemical recognition at the species level. His biosignature is producing markers that," he paused, manipulating the data streams. "Wait, these markers, they're associated with persistence hunting." Silence filled the lab. "What's persistence hunting?" asked another researcher. "Ancient predation strategy," Chix Thermal said slowly. "Predator doesn't ambush or overpower prey, just follows it, continuously. Until the prey collapses from exhaustion." "That's horrifying," someone muttered. "That's efficient," Naomi corrected. "Humans are really good at it." Zilth Senvira felt her secondary heart skip again. "Define really good." "We used to chase animals for days," Naomi said casually. "Our ancestors would pick a target and just keep following it. Through heat, terrain changes, whatever. Eventually the prey would overheat or collapse, and we'd catch up." The room went very quiet. "Days?" Lezix Oricodus repeated. "However long it took," Naomi confirmed. "Humans are endurance specialists. We're not fast, but we don't stop." Chix Thermal was pulling up comparative data now, his movements increasingly frantic. "This explains the biochemical markers. Predators evolved to recognize threats they could escape from: ambush hunters, pack hunters, even pursuit predators with limited stamina. But persistence hunters?" He looked up. "There's no escape. You can run, but something that never stops tracking you. That's not a predator. That's inevitability." "You're saying every predator in this station recognizes humans as something inescapable?" Zilth Senvira asked. "I'm saying their ancestors did," Chix Thermal said. "And that recognition is written so deep into survival instinct that it's still triggering millions of cycles later." A junior researcher raised one appendage hesitantly. "How many species did humans hunt this way?" Naomi thought about it. "Most of the large prey animals on our planet, at some point. Deer, antelope, even megafauna before they went extinct." "You hunted them to extinction?" "No, climate change mostly did that. We just hunted them while they were around." Somehow this didn't seem to reassure anyone. Silas's voice joined the communication channel. "Hey, sorry, just got Naomi's message." "What's going on?" "Your species is causing an existential crisis," Lezix Oricodus said flatly. "Which one?" "We cause a lot of those." Zilth Senvira explained the situation quickly: the unclassified DNA, the predator responses, the persistence hunting markers. Silas listened quietly, then laughed. "Oh, yeah, that makes sense." "How does any of this make sense?" Chix Thermal demanded. "Humans are weird," Silas said. "We didn't evolve as apex predators. We evolved as something stranger. We're not the fastest or strongest, but we're really really good at just continuing to exist near things until they stop being able to ignore us. That's the most terrifying description of a hunting strategy I've ever heard, someone said. It gets worse, Naomi added. We didn't just hunt animals to exhaustion. Sometimes we'd chase them until they were too tired to run, and then we'd just keep them, domesticate them. The scientific panel processed this information with visible distress. You're telling me, Zixoracotus said carefully, that humans would pursue prey until it was too exhausted to flee, and instead of killing it, would befriend it? Worked pretty well with wolves, Silas said. Now we've got hundreds of variations of domestic canines. Different sizes, temperaments, purposes. How many species did you do this to? Chixthermal asked. Silas started listing. Wolves, obviously. Cats, though they might have domesticated themselves. Horses, cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, chickens, ducks, geese, rabbits, ferrets, various rodents, several types of birds. Stop, Zixoracotus said. Please stop. I'm only at mammals and birds, Silas said. We also domesticated insects for honey production, and there's an argument that we've formed symbiotic relationships with certain bacteria and fungi. Zilth Senvira held up one hand. Let me understand. Your species encountered predators and prey across your entire planet, pursued them with such persistence that their only options were death or compliance, and then turned the survivors into companions. When you phrase it like that, it sounds weird, Naomi said. It is weird, Chixthermal said, his voice climbing. That's not how food chains work. That's not how evolution works. You can't just decide entire species are going to be your friends. Sure you can, Silas said. You just have to be patient and creative. An alert flashed across Zilth Senvira's terminal. She pulled up the data, and her blood went cold again. The Vrax, she said quietly. It's not just testing its containment anymore. The holographic display showed the predator containment wing. The Vrax beast had methodically identified every structural weakness in its cell and was now applying steady, calculated pressure to the reinforced barrier. How long until breach? Zixoracotus demanded. Zilth Senvira ran the calculations. At current rate, less than a cycle. Is it trying to escape? Someone asked. No, Zilth Senvira said, tracking the creature's orientation. It's trying to establish distance. From Desmond. Naomi leaned forward. Where's Desmond now? Secure holding, Zixoracotus said. Biologically isolated from the rest of the station. That's not going to matter, Chixthermal said, studying the predator behavioral data. They don't need to sense him. They know he's here. Ancestral memory doesn't need current input. So what do we do? Someone asked. The lab fell silent. On the monitors, the Vrax continued its methodical work, and across the facility, every other predator remained frozen in attentive recognition. We could relocate him to another station, suggested a researcher. Reports are coming in from other facilities, Zixoracotus said grimly. Any station with human personnel is experiencing similar phenomena. Naomi smiled slightly. Turns out being the thing that evolution couldn't quite categorize has some side effects. This isn't amusing, Zilth Senvira said. Little bit amusing, Silas said. From a certain perspective. The Vrax beast's cell groaned under pressure. Metal stress indicators climbed into warning ranges. We need to make a decision, Zilth Senvira said. The predator wing won't hold indefinitely. Zilth Senvira looked at the genetic data one more time. Unclassified species, persistence hunter markers. Recognition patterns written into ancient survival instinct. There's one option we haven't considered, she said slowly. What? Let Desmond interact with the Vrax directly. The room erupted in immediate protest, which Zilth Senvira ignored. Think about it, she said. The predators aren't aggressive. They're trying to establish boundaries, distance. They can recognize him as something they should avoid, but containment is forcing proximity. That's creating stress. So your solution is to remove containment, Zixoracotus said. Put an unclassified persistence hunter in direct contact with our most dangerous predator. Either that, Zilth Senvira said, or we wait for the Vrax to break out on its own and handle the situation without our supervision. Nobody had a good counter-argument for that. On the monitors, the Vrax beast continued its patient, methodical work. Time was running out. The corridor felt longer than it actually was. Desmond walked down the center while Zilth Senvira monitored from a secure observation post, surrounded by security teams with weapons they probably wouldn't have time to use if this went wrong. "This is the worst idea anyone has ever had," Mzix said over the comm system. "Noted," Desmond said calmly. At the end of the corridor, the Vrax beast waited. It had stopped working on its damaged cell the moment the decision was made. Now it just stood there, massive and perfectly still, watching the human approach. "Biosignatures are stable," Zilth Senvira reported. "The Vrax's stress hormones are elevated but not critical." "What about Desmond's?" Silas asked. "Barely elevated at all. That's just how he is," Naomi said. "He should panic," Mzix muttered. That creature could tear him apart in seconds. Desmond reached the final barrier. The containment field shimmered between human and apex predator. He stopped, hands at his sides. "I'm opening the barrier," Zilth Senvira said. 3, 2, wait, Mzix said. 1. The barrier dissolved. For a long moment, nothing happened. Desmond and the Vrax faced each other across open space, separated by maybe 20 paces. The creature was enormous, all muscle and predatory design. Its eyes locked onto Desmond with calculating focus. Desmond didn't move, didn't advance, didn't retreat, just maintained eye contact and breathed normally. "Why isn't it attacking?" someone whispered. "Because it's confused," Chicks Thermal said, watching bioscan data. "Every instinct says this is prey bipedal, no natural weapons, physically weaker. But something deeper is screaming danger." The Vrax took one step forward. Its claws scraped against metal. Desmond remained motionless. Another step. The beast was close enough now that Desmond could probably smell its predator musk, the scent of something designed to kill. Still, he didn't move. "His heart rate," Zilth Senvira said. "It's barely changed." "Persistence, predator," Silas said quietly. "We're really good at being patient." The Vrax circled slowly, testing angles. Desmond turned slightly to maintain visual contact but otherwise held his ground. The creature's breathing was heavy, stressed. It wanted to establish dominance, something to resolve the threat assessment its instinct struggled with. But Desmond just stood there, waiting. Not challenging, not fleeing, just existing in the space with absolute calm. "It's going to attack," Mzix said. Seconds passed, then minutes. The Vrax continued its slow circle, and Desmond tracked it with minimal movement. No aggression, no fear, just steady, patient presence. "This is incredible," Chicks Thermal said. "The Vrax is experiencing cognitive dissonance. Its prey drive is triggered, but survival instinct is overriding the attack response." "Why?" Zilth Senvira asked. "Because Desmond isn't running," Naomi said. "And something that doesn't run from an apex predator is either stupid or more dangerous." The Vrax stopped circling. It stood directly in front of Desmond now, close enough to strike. Its muscles tensed. Every security team aimed their weapons. Then, slowly, deliberately, the Vrax backed away. 1 step, 2, 3. It retreated to the far wall and settled into a resting position, eyes still locked on Desmond, but body language completely changed. "It submitted," Mzix said in disbelief. "It recognized," Zilth Senvira corrected, recognized that engaging would be a mistake. Desmond exhaled and turned to walk back. The Vrax watched him leave but didn't move. "How did you know it wouldn't attack?" Mzix demanded once Desmond was back in the secure corridor. "I didn't," Desmond said, "but running would have guaranteed it. Predators chase things that run. And if it had attacked," Desmond shrugged, "then we would have learned something different." Zilth Senvira was compiling data frantically. "This changes everything. It's not species recognition, it's strategy recognition." The Vrax identified Desmond as a persistence threat and decided retreat was optimal. "Because humans don't give up," Silas said. "Because you can't give up," Chicks Thermal said. "Your entire species is built around continuing, not fastest, not strongest, just most persistent. Every predator eventually stops when energy cost exceeds benefit. But persistence hunters just keep going. The prey runs for hours, you'll still be there. It hides, you track it. It fights, you wait for it to tire. That's horrifying, someone said. That's survival, Naomi countered. Reports flooded in from across the station. Predator agitation levels were dropping. The creatures weren't calm, but the desperate edge had faded. They'd watched the Vrax encounter, watched the apex predator back down, and somewhere in ancestral memory, something clicked. They're adapting their behavior, Zilth and Vera said. Real-time behavioral modification based on observed interaction. Learning to coexist with the recognition, or learning to avoid confrontation, MZXMNX said. Same result, Silas said. Humans are really good at turning "you should avoid me" into "we should probably be friends." How? The Zixoricodus asked. Patience, Naomi said. And snacks, usually, but mostly patience. Zilth Senvera looked at Desmond, who was accepting water from a technician and looking remarkably unbothered. Your species domesticated wolves by doing this? More or less, Desmond said. Minus the space station part. And you domesticated them into what? Everything from lapdogs to working animals, different sizes, temperaments, purposes. All from the same base species. The panel exchanged disturbed looks. How many species have you done this with? Chicks Thermal asked carefully. On Earth? Desmond thought about it. Dozens, probably. We're pretty social. You're pretty terrifying, Mizix Emanex said. Little bit of both. Silas agreed cheerfully. On the monitors, the Vrax remained in its resting position, watching the corridor. Not hunting, not aggressive, just aware. And somewhere in its ancient predator brain, a boundary had been established. Not through violence or dominance, but through simple, patient presence of something that refused to run. Something that never stopped. Something unclassified but unmistakable. We need to update galactic biological protocols, Zixoricodus said finally. Immediately. Update them to say what? Zilth Senvera asked. He looked at the data, at the predator responses, at Desmond casually discussing domestication with Naomi. That humans aren't a predator species, he said slowly. There's something evolution forgot to put boundaries on. The Galactic Biological Council convened 3 cycles later in what would be remembered as the most uncomfortable scientific discussion in recorded history. Zilth Senvira presented her findings to a room full of xenobiologists and very nervous policymakers. Behind her, holographic displays showed Earth's ecological history in uncomfortable detail. Humans didn't survive by being apex predators, she said. They survived by systematically befriending or domesticating everything that could kill them. A council member raised one appendage. Define systematically. Zilth Senvira pulled up a list. Wolves into companion animals, horses into transportation, numerous prey species into food sources they actively protect, birds of prey for hunting assistance, venomous reptiles as pets. Pets? Intentionally. In their homes. The room fell silent. And species that refused? Asked another member. They studied them until they understood them, Naomi said from the back. Then tried again with a different approach. Zixoricodus stood to present security analysis. Human presence at 86 facilities across 12 sectors. Every location reports identical patterns, initial recognition response, followed by behavioral adaptation. The predators aren't aggressive. They're cautious. Cautious of an unclassified species, someone muttered. Cautious of a persistence pattern, Chicks Thermal corrected. Humans are biological generalists, optimized for endurance, hunting, tool use, social cooperation, and adaptation simultaneously. This violates standard evolutionary theory. They didn't specialize, Zilth Senvira said. They generalized so aggressively they became unpredictable across every ecological category. MZXMNX added tactical assessment. They don't follow standard threat matrices. Not apex predators, but predators treat them as superior threats. Not prey, but they bond across species barriers. So what are they? Demanded a council member. Evolutionary wildcards, Zilth Senvira said. Madeline, another human consultant, spoke up. You're overcomplicating this. Humans are stubborn and social. We don't like being alone, and we don't accept impossible. Your species turned wolves into lap dogs, Zixarachidus said. That's ecological warfare. We call it friendship, Madeline said. The council reached consensus. Humans would be classified as adaptive social apex, a new category created specifically for species that defied existing frameworks. All predator species would receive briefings before human contact. The briefings should emphasize what? Asked a coordinator. That humans will attempt social bonding, Zilth Senvera said, regardless of whether it's tactically sound or wanted by the other species, Naomi added. The coordinator looked disturbed. You're saying humans will try to befriend things that want to kill them? We'll try to befriend things, period, Madeline said. Whether they want to kill us is irrelevant to the friendship attempt. Mzik Semenex pulled up reports. Since initial contact, humans have attempted to befriend 6 dangerous species, 3 toxic ones, and 1 that exists partially in another dimension. How did that last one work out? Still ongoing, Silas said. But we're making progress. The Council approved limited research partnerships with extensive oversight. Desmond, quiet until now, spoke up. Quick question, do these protocols apply to species we've already started working with? Every council member turned. Define already started, Zilth Senvera said slowly. Remember that juvenile reptilian predator from the rehabilitation wing? The one that attacked 3 handlers before isolation? Yeah. Desmond pulled out a holographic display. This is Rex. The image showed Desmond with the reptilian predator curled up on his lap, looking remarkably content. You named it Rex, Lizix Orokodus said. He responds to it now. Also sits on command. We're working on fetch. Collective silence. How, Mezix Emanex said, did you domesticate a non-socializable species in less than 3 cycles? Patience, Desmond said. And I saved some rations for treats. You bribed a predator into companionship? I prefer establishing mutually beneficial social bonds through positive reinforcement. Zilth Senvera closed her files with a gesture suggesting she was done. Humans are cleared for galactic integration with oversight. And the domestication protocols? We'll implement them, Lizix Orokodus said. And pray humans follow them. No promises, Silas said. Later, in the observation deck, Zixarachidus found Zilth Senvera staring at the stars. Are you all right? I realized something, she said quietly. Humans have been here less than a cycle. They've already domesticated 1 impossible predator, befriended multiple dangerous species, and caused every facility to revise protocols. Your point? What happens in 10 cycles? 100? They don't adapt to their environment, they convince it to adapt to them, through friendship. That's terrifying. The terrifying part is they're genuinely friendly. No malice, no conquest. They just refuse to accept that things can't be friends. From down the corridor, good boy, yes you are. Who's a good apex predator? Lizix Orokodus made a final note. Recommend monitoring human socialization patterns. Not for security. For documentation of what happens when evolution forgets to teach a species about boundaries. Zilth Senvera updated humanity's permanent file. His DNA matched no known species. But every predator still recognized him. Not because they'd encountered humans before, because somewhere in ancestral memory, something remembered being pursued until it stopped running. And then, somehow, becoming friends with the thing that was chasing it. Classification, adaptive social apex, status, friendship, inevitable. Recommendation, just accept it. This was just one story. Subscribe now so you don't miss what's coming next.